Albuquerque Comic Con. How the hell are you? Let's get this party started. Ladies and gentlemen, bring him to the stage. Please put your hands together for Austin St. John.
What's up, man? Nice suit. Is there a video somewhere? I hear it. I can't see it. I'm having flashbacks. So 10:30, these are all the people that weren't out drinking last night. Some of you are like, no, I was drinking. So what is she dressed as? I can't tell with all the glitter. Oh, never mind. You're in pink. She's in baby clothes. All right. Okay. She's a putty.
He's a putty, yeah.
Does he give you that much trouble?
Yes.
Wait till he turns 2. It'll get better. Nah. What can I do for you guys, man? Yeah? Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay. All right. We're warming up. Yeah. All right. We need to get coffee. Man, I already had a cup. I need like 3 more. All I did was go for a run last night, so I have no excuse to look this way. I don't know what the problem is. Superman. And what's that? I'm breaking your heart. Why am I breaking your heart? Well, you know, I don't even know your name. I could have brought it earlier, but is that your husband? Boyfriend? He might have been, it would have just been awkward. Like I'm walking into the bedroom, hey honey, here's your coffee. He's laying there in his Superman underwear, and you know, it's just, you know, I'm just saying. Could have been awkward. My wife wouldn't have appreciated it either, I'm just saying. So, all right. Wow, I'm blinded by the lights. This is why I never did theater. I was just thinking of weird, cheesy lines and decided I probably shouldn't do that, so. Any questions?
What was it like being a Power Ranger?
You know, it was, at the time, it was, when I started on the show, it was unknown. Nobody knew what it was. When I first went and auditioned for the show, it wasn't even called Power Rangers, it was called Phantoms. So they put out this massive advertising ad in the LA newspaper. Now, let's figure this out for a minute. The LA newspaper in LA, full of 500,000 actors, starving actors, who weren't working. So imagine how many people showed up for the auditions. I had heard about it, and I wasn't gonna go audition. They were like, you know, you should come check this out, be a part of this. I was like, no, I'm not an actor. I have no interest, no desire. I'm pretty good. I'm gonna teach martial arts and keep going to high school, because that's what I was doing at the time. I was a high school kid, and I taught martial arts. And after about 3 weeks, a buddy of mine nagged me. He says, listen, I'll run an acting studio. He says, if you come in, take acting classes with me, he says, I'll bring a bunch of my clientele, because I just opened up a dojo. I'll bring a bunch of my clientele into your dojo to help bring in new people for your dojo. I was like, okay, fine. So I was taking these cheesy commercial classes, and really it was to meet people and get them into the martial arts, which was working great. Not long after I got there, he's like, well, I heard about this audition for a show called Phantoms. They're looking for this young guy. They're looking for 5 people, but one of them is a young guy martial artist, like a leadership type. He goes, I'm telling you, man, you should go. I was like, nope. Taking the classes, because that was the trade. I gave you my word. I'm sticking to my word. That's the deal. He goes, all right, I'll bet you $20 you won't be wasting your time if you go. This was after 3 weeks of bugging me to go. And I was like, $20. That's back when gas was 89 cents. I was like, that's a tank of gas? I might even get a loaf of bread and some bologna for that, right? So I was like, this is, okay, I'll take your $20, sucker. And I lost 20 bucks. And the rest is history. So nobody knew what it was. So we all, I was like, they handed me a script. And they were like, would you mind reading this monologue? And I read the monologue silently, and I went, you want me to say this out loud? Like, seriously? And you want me to be seriously, when I do this? And, you know, it was something, I don't even remember anymore. Something about, well, if you go back and you watch the very first episode where the red streaks, they turn us into the streaks and we're flying through the sky. If you listen to the lines that I said then, that was the monologue. And they were trying to explain to me how I was a red streak flying through the sky to save everybody. I was like, wait, what? I watch Star Trek, man. There's no streaks, okay? All right, I see that. So, my very first audition, there was a ton of guys there, and they just asked us, they're like, okay. They didn't even give us paperwork. They didn't even ask, were you an actor? They were like, how many of you know martial arts? Hands went up. Those that didn't have hands that went up, they're like, there's the door. I was like, wow, okay. How many of you, again, no martial arts, once the ones that didn't went out the door? We all raised our hands. We're like, great, step forward and show us. And I remember, because the room had a really low ceiling, like, I could reach up, I'm only 5'9", I could reach up and maybe only be 6 inches away from touching the ceiling. I'm sitting there thinking, well, I'm not doing any backflips in here. So I did a big demo and I managed to get in a backflip. I don't know how, because I was like, if I go too high, my feet are gonna hit the ceiling and I'm gonna land on my face. So I tried to avoid that for sure. And afterwards, you could see them because we had numbers on our chests. And they were just writing things down like, thank you very much, have a nice day. Thank you very much, have a nice day. It looked like they were bored, they were playing checkers or something. And I left at like 12 o'clock that afternoon, and there was a message on my machine at 12:02. We'd like you back tomorrow for a follow-up. 5 auditions later, I was wearing that suit. So that's kind of how it all started for me. We had no idea it was going to turn into what it is. I think the coolest part about being a Power Ranger today is you guys have grown up. So we get to hear and see how we affected you and your families, over the years. And that's something that's rare for a lot of actors. They do a show, they disappear, maybe they get good ratings, they're really excited. The really, really amazing ones might get an Emmy or a Grammy or I don't know, whatever those things are. And the rest just do their jobs and they don't really know how they did. And there wasn't social media back then. So I did a show, we were told we were #1 in the world in 40 countries, 90 languages. I mean, we knew it was a tidal wave. But today I get to sit down with you guys and hear why you thought it was cool. And even the people that walk by my table, because they're too cool, they're like, oh no, I was too cool to watch it then, I'm too cool to say anything now. But they all walk by and they see the poster and I see the grin. Because they know. We're too cool to tell the truth. So it's kind of a trip seeing how many people the show has affected. And back then it wasn't cool. If you were like a certain age in high school, you didn't watch the show. Not when people were watching. I have college kids that come up, and guys my age, and they're like, hey man, I loved your show. And I was like, oh, where were you in college? They're like, I was a sophomore, freshman, whatever. And I was like, did you admit watching it back then? They're like, oh, hell no. We just close the door and watch the show, jump around, and then come out and be like, wow, did you see that really cool, other show? So that's okay, man. I'll be some closet secrets for some folks. Just not you with the coffee. Okay. I don't need Superman over here kicking my butt. So what's up? Question.
My first question is, what was it like working with Jason David Frank? And my second one is, do you have any funny backstage stories, especially working with Paul and Jason Narvi?
Well, I mean, we got the show going. We got it picked up by the networks, and it turned into a tidal wave. Then they introduced in Jason Frank's character, Tommy. And Tommy and Jason filmed probably the most famous episodes in the history of the show today. The Green with Evil series, which was, people were riveted for that one. He and I both made each other's characters even more popular. I didn't even know it was possible, but we did. So it was pretty cool. We worked hard. We were professionals. We did our jobs. There were a lot of pranks, and there were some not so cool pranks. I won't go into those, but comedy stories, and there's a million of them. Okay, so do you guys remember the episode with Pudgy Pig? All right, it was this big, horrible-looking stuffed animal pig suit that ate all of our power weapons. It's kind of funny. Well, you remember the food fight scene, right? I remember our props guy. The props guy is the guy that makes like all the swords and the communicators and all that stuff, all the tools that we use. Well, they decided in the script I was going to be swinging a link of hot dogs like nunchucks. And again, I looked at the script and I was like, are you serious? And they said, yes. At which point I didn't ask anymore because I knew they were always serious. We're going to turn a purse into a monster. They were serious. Either that or like the writers all sat down one day and they were like, we were out of ideas. And some gal came in and sat down her purse and they're like, I've got it. We're going to make that a monster. Anyway, so they set up this one scene and there's supposed to be this huge fight scene. Well, what you guys didn't see behind the scenes was they just armed a bunch of teenagers, well, I was the only teenager, but close to teenagers, the other cast, with pies and food, and told us to throw it, and then asked us not to hit anybody behind the camera. Come on, man. I was 18. I was typecast as a teenager with attitude. And then you give me food and say, don't hit this, that, or the other. Let me promise you, that's first on my target list now. So, and I can remember they had plastic draped over everything. The director of photography, that's the guy that looks through the lens. They were all covered. The camera was covered, and there was like this little hole for the lens. I was like, I like a challenge, okay? And so we let the fights go on, and we're throwing pie. I mean, it's hanging from the ceilings. There was countless takes. And then I slipped. You know, I was aiming over there. I don't know how it got over there. I slipped. So, and I got the lens to the camera. I got the director, and I was thrilled. But I'm so sorry. I don't know how that did. It was an accident. I mean, don't let the smile fool you. I'm laughing because it's horrible. I'm so sorry I got you guys all with pie. And all the other guys were doing the same. Well, except for David Yost. He was always the consummate professional. I'm not throwing pie. I'm here to do my job. He was always excited to be an actor. So I was excited for him. But I was a teenager with attitude and had a certain lack of maturity at the time. So I used to throw carrots over the walls. So we have interior sets. If you took this room, they'd build like the juice bar over there, the command center over there, and the school set over there. Well, once you walk outside of the interior of those sets, there was walkways, like these aisles, in between each set. Well, I got bored. If I wasn't in front of camera, or if I wasn't out kicking something on another camera, then I had to find ways to entertain myself, and that usually meant trouble. So I can remember tossing carrots over. They'd be shooting another scene for somebody else, and I got those little baby carrots. I'd be like, oh, I know who's shooting right now, and I'd toss them over the walls into the set so there's carrots flying through their camera lanes. And I'd hear, cut! And then I'd hear feet. They'd come running around. I was already gone. I was a ghost. So then they thought they got smart. They're like, we're going to post people at the end of each aisle. I was a Power Ranger. So then, rather than go down each aisle, I would just pack up with a lot of ammo and I would spider crawl across the top of the rafters and just drop them in. But I'd do it from an angle so it still looked like it was coming from other places. I watched them run around in circles. Where's that coming from? Find them! You know, the director would do his best to read a repulse. Giving me such a headache! You know, and I just chuckled. It was great. I had a good time. They never caught me until now, probably, because you guys are recording this, huh? Yeah, that's okay. Now it'll probably be a laugh. I'll get a stink bomb on my front door or something. But anyway, so there was all kinds of debauchery, and that's just the legal stories I can tell in front of little putties. So I think that's a hand way back there in the back. Go ahead, Matt. Is that I can't tell. Yes, you.
What was like the pay compensation and like contracts dealing with? Was that easy? Was that hard? Like, where you get like if it was compared to like maybe pay from like a national commercial to obviously a national kid TV show? Like, what was their compensation?
Okay, all right. So on a legitimate national commercial, what's a big one that's out right now? Progressive. Okay, so you pick Flo from Progressive, right? We all know her. She's done a bunch of commercials. She's probably sitting on millions, multi-millions in the bank right now. How does it compare to that? I made $611.22 every 2 weeks after taxes. The show made $1 billion its first year. So none of us saw a penny of that. Walter Twee and I decided to leave the show. We told him, if you guys don't change this, we're out of here. Hola, dígame. We said, you know, if you guys don't take the show union, don't start at least paying us respectably. And none of us wanted to be millionaires. We weren't trying to gouge them. But I shouldn't have had trouble helping my mom pay for groceries. I shouldn't have been living with stunt guys and other actors so I could save money and pay my bills. So, you know, once we figured out the show made $1 billion and they were paying us what they were paying us, we kind of began to understand they were screwing us over a little bit. So even at 1920, I went to the other Rangers and I said, look, man, I'm done with this. I'm not playing this game. I grew up in a Marine Corps family. I've taught martial arts or studied my whole life. I understand that I may not be worth millions, but I should be worth enough to live on my own and pay my own bills. And they all agreed with me. In the end, 3 chose to stand up and leave with me. Well, 2 others, 3 of us total. The other guys stayed on the show. And they knew I was getting ready to leave, so they turned around and they wrote Jason Frank in as the leader, which is how he became the White Ranger and the leader. Not many people know that story. And at the end of the day, a lot of the cast members that came after got paid a lot better because we left. But Haim and I, we just don't see eye to eye, and we never will. I'm the guy that broke his show, and it made him mad. But in the end, if you're not going to take care of your people, I mean, how many, you guys all have jobs, right? How many of you are getting paid what you're worth? Okay, so that's point 1. Now, however, there's something called minimum wage that guarantees you're not paid below that, right? We were on a show that was non-union. The union shows guarantee that we don't get paid below a certain minimum. So you guys are protected by minimum wage put in place by the government. Our non-union show, we had 0 protection. And once I figured that out, I knew why it was wrong. And that's why I left. So anyway, there you go. Next question. Shoot. Well, you had your hand up last time. Go ahead.
Yeah. I got 2 questions. One, I don't know if you noticed me, but we met at, I don't know if you remember me, but we met at Comic Expo.
Okay, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. It's me, Theo. You know, the guy who created Ranger Man?
Awesome. Good for you, brother.
Yeah, but... Well,
It's hard to remember everybody in all these places that I go, especially when I can't see you.
Okay, well, yeah, it's me, and I already got your autograph, and...
Well, thanks, brother.
There's a question I need to ask you.
Okay.
2 questions I need to ask you. One, how was it like choking Jason David Frank on Turbo Power Rangers movie? and I remember your line. No, I'm the one with the muscles and bones. That's right, Cheese. But you forgot your brain power.
You got it, buddy. There you go.
What was it like doing that scene?
Well, I remember when I came in, they had asked me, because I was originally slated to be the Red Ranger in the first movie with Ivan Ooze, and I turned that down. That was right as we left the show. When it came back for the second movie, they approached me for the second movie and the Gold Ranger series at the same time. It was kind of, when they asked me about the movie, they're like, hey, you know, what are you thinking about, or what would you think about coming back, you know, as the Red Ranger for the second movie? I was like, I don't want to be a Ranger. They're like, what? I was like, I want to be a bad guy. And they're like, we can't do that to your character. I was like, you did it in the series. There were a couple episodes where we all turned evil. They're like, yeah, but you're like the guy that we can't do that to you. I was like, I'd love to be a bad guy. You know, red glowing eyes. At the time I was kidding about the red glowing eyes. And little did I know. And finally I see Shuki, who was Haim Saban's number 2. I see the wheels turning and he's thinking. And so they sent me a script, and Kimberly and I, we get kidnapped while scuba diving or something. We weren't doing the hokey pokey, everybody always asks. And so anyway, then we get dipped in this volcano and we turn evil. And I'm reading through the script and I see that there's a scene where I like beat the snot out of 3 Rangers in like 2 seconds. And bad guys, they always get caught with the monologue, right? They're winning, it's already done, they beat the good guy, and then they start talking. Always with the monologue, and that's how they get caught, right? So here I am, I beat the snot out of, I think it was the yellow and the blue. And then, you know, I kicked Jason Frank around like he was a play toy. And then I start talking. And I get dumped head first into a volcano. So how was it choking him?
Yeah.
It was very easy. I just put my hand there, and because it was choreographed, it didn't take a lot of effort. But I had to flex and make it look tough. You know, I had to make it look tough.
Yeah,
but
that part was cool. And another question I was going to ask, I don't know if you can handle this question, but
oh boy.
Here goes.
Okay.
Are you gonna be on? Are you gonna do a cameo on the new Power Rangers reboot movie?
No. Sorry, buddy. No, I had some brief talks with them about the new movie, and we just don't get along. So they asked me to come back for the Super Mega Smackdown, whatever that thing was.
It's
Super Mega.
Force.
I believe you know, but yeah, that thing. They asked me to come back for that, but under time I was in the Middle East for the war, and I couldn't leave what I was doing. Hey guys, stop shooting at each other. There's a med kit, there's the rifles, there's the ammunition. I gotta go shoot this thing in New Zealand for a week. I'll be back. If you need anything, let me know, but I couldn't do it, so. But I think that was the last time I talked to them about anything else. I know that recently they've been calling around asking about some other upcoming projects, and they have not called me. They've called everybody that I've worked with, but not me.
Okay.
And I'm okay with that.
And the new Power Rangers.
You know about the Order, right? How many of you heard of the Order? And I'm not talking like the church. Okay. Well, you guys know we have 17 former Power Ranger actors coming in to do this movie with us. We also have Nichelle Nichols from Star Trek. We have Gigi Edley from Farscape. It was a huge international show. We have another actor that I can't announce his name yet, but I can tell you he just came from, I think it's Supernatural. So we've pulled in some other pretty talented people, and it's going to be 90 minutes of action, just nonstop butt kicking. It's called The Order. We just got in the director from Star Wars. He directed Wanted with Angelina Jolie. He directed Star Wars episodes 1, 2, and 3. We got in a good buddy of his who's a fight choreographer. I start training with him next week in LA. So he and I are going to kind of get together and do what martial artists do. Okay, what do you know? What do you know? And then we'll beat the snot out of each other for a while, figure out what we know, and then we'll put together an amazing fight. And there's going to be some really awesome stuff coming up. So you guys should pay attention for this movie. It's going to be a great time. The Order. You had a question, sir.
As an artist, how difficult was it for you to switch from actual martial arts to like stage fighting?
Man, I struggled with that. And it wasn't physical skill or talent. Basically what he's talking about are minute things that those of you who don't study wouldn't notice. And maybe even those of you who do might not notice either. For instance, when you throw a crescent kick or an in to out kick or out to in kick or jump spinning kick or any of these kicks, you pretty much are connecting with the spinning kicks. You're connecting with your heel because it's the hardest part on the foot. It's the most dense bone, does the most damage, and you can make contact taking the least damage yourself. You don't want to point your feet. You don't want to point your toes because those are the smallest bones. They're the easiest to damage. Well, the first thing they did when I got on TV, they're like, okay, now when you throw this kick, we want you to point your foot and your toes. I'm not doing that. Everybody in the world's gonna think I'm a fake martial artist. They're like, trust me, everybody that's a real martial artist does this for TV because it looks cool. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And after 5 or 6 episodes, I got together with professional stunt guys and other professional martial artists in the industry, saw that they were indeed real pros, and saw what they were doing fights. And we sat down and they would film one their way, and then I'd film one my way. And they both looked identical except for a few key places and pieces, and sure enough, their stuff looked cooler. And they're like, all you gotta do, instead of throwing those clean straight line punches, and keeping your jabs and your hooks all in tight, make them bigger. Make them bigger because it looks cooler. Well, it's horrible martial arts technique, but they were right, it looked cooler. So eventually I shifted gears, but I struggled with it a lot. I even went back to my original masters. I was like, you're not gonna believe what they're asking me to do. And I told them, and they were like, it's TV, go ahead. We get it. I was like, yes sir, okay. I mean, we were all pros. Okay, well, I mean, out of the original 5, I was a martial artist. Even Walter Jones had some martial arts training. And the stunt guys that came on were all pros. So, you know, occasionally we might, you know, slip a little one in there and it would be, you know, a little bit of contact, but we never really hurt each other. We never had any serious injuries. There were some serious injuries that came from other choreographers with other stuntmen when, you know, they put too much weight on a wire for a wire gag. But we never, and I don't know how, I don't know how many on-camera fights I've had. It's got to be 1,000 plus. And I never hurt anybody. So a couple times, you know, you catch a little punch in the nose. You're like, oh yeah, good one. And they're like, oh, sorry, you know, you owe me a good one. And later you kick them in the kidney a little bit or something. But, you know, it's really about it. You're like, yeah, remember that punch in the nose? How'd that feel? So, but it was fun like that. It was never like, I'm going to kill you later. You know what I mean? So I saw some other hands back over here somewhere. Go ahead. Gray shirt. Can't tell. You, yes.
I just watched all your Power Ranger moves from your television. And besides, I was going to defend myself. Even though I know my sister didn't know what karate move is, but I do from your shows.
That's pretty awesome, buddy. Good for you.
Yeah, and I'm a cartoonist.
I can't draw stick figures, so I'm impressed.
Well, every time I draw Superman, and I did, I'm doing all the your Power Rangers moves. Especially I was gonna try to buy that dagger of the Green Ranger. Besides, green is always my color.
Good for you, buddy. All right. Next question. Go ahead.
Eric, be quiet. Over here.
That is creepy. When you're hearing voices, I was like, is that God? I've been watching you.
Everyone's loud.
So how do you think the show would have been different if, like, say, you and Savant had gotten along and you did get paid and you stayed on the show?
Well, I think you would have seen me stay for another 100, 200 episodes. I think the Red Ranger would have been in charge for a lot longer. So I wouldn't have had any reason to leave the show. But on camera and off camera, I chose to fight for what I believed was right. So, something we all got to do every day, right? Everybody spends so much time worrying about whether or not people like you. It's really nice to be liked and loved, but let me promise you, the more important thing to worry about in life is whether people are doing right by you and whether you're doing right by them. If you can make sure that's happening, then the who likes who is going to take care of itself. Make sure you're doing right by others and make sure they're doing right by you. That's what you ought to be worried about in life. And in my opinion, spend a little time sending up some prayers. That's helpful too. So you would have seen a lot more of me. Yes?
So on your filming, were you active duty then, or did you start filming back into the military after doing Power Rangers?
So she asked me if I was in the service while I was filming. I was not. I was never in the military. I was a DoD contractor, so I worked for Department of Defense. I originally went into firefighting, got into EMS, emergency medical services, got my paramedic, and then I had these fighting skills, and I hated not using those. So I started getting together with SWAT teams, started getting together with police, was teaching them courses on how to handle takedowns and things like that. And then I got in with a lot of special operations guys in the military who came into my dojo, and I trained with them, and they said, listen, man, we're looking for guys with your skills. Can you shoot? I said, my dad's a Marine. He's been teaching me to shoot since I was 5. So they found out I could shoot, found out I could fight, and I was a medic. And it was a pretty rare set of skills for one person to have. So it wasn't long before weird people in suits and ties were showing up and asking me funny questions. And then I was taking polygraphs, and I was getting investigated all the way back to my first grade teacher, and given some pretty intense clearances. And then I was gone, just poof, disappeared, which most of you know, I disappeared. So that's kind of how that happened. I think you have to go talk to her. I don't want her to get mad at me. If you have questions, why don't you just form a line over there by her? That way we can bang this out. And let's keep it to one question so I can try and get through folks a little faster. That way everybody gets their piece.
Hello. My question for you is, was there a moment or event in your life that you realized that Power Rangers was a phenomenon?
You know, the first time we understood, or at least I understood, I was sitting on set with Walter Jones, who played Zach, and I was wearing that suit, but we'd get hot and sweaty, so I would take off the top part and just tie it around my waist. So Walter and I were sitting there like that. I think we were both naked from the waist up because we were hot. We'd been filming a fight scene. And we were sitting in our chairs, and I was reading over my script, and the producer came downstairs, and it was late in Culver City on our set. It was, 8, 9 o'clock. It was dark. We were tired. We'd been filming all day. And he says, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know you guys are #1 in the world." And Walter and I were sitting, we were tired. We looked at each other, and we looked at him, and we were like, "What do you mean?" He says, #1 Nielsen ratings in the world. Nobody's beating us. And then he goes, "Good job." And he turned around and walked off. Like that was it. Good job for being the most popular show in the world. Handshake, deuces, and he was out. So that was the first time we'd been told. The first time I got to really experience it, because the first year we filmed so much, so heavy, that we didn't really get a lot of time. We got 1 week off for Christmas, and I decided to go shopping at Glendale Galleria to pick up a new pair of jeans. I hadn't seen what public life was like in almost a year. And I walked into the mall, and as I was walking in, I remember seeing people just staring at me. I was like, I got a booger hanging on my nose? What's going on? And I barely made it inside the front doors at the Glendale Galleria, and the first shriek went out. And I needed 2 pairs of jeans by the time this was done. So I got mobbed. They took my sunglasses, my hat, tore my shirt. I had claw marks down my back and on my pec. It looked like I'd fought a Wolverine. And I was missing 1 shoe, and the back pocket of my jeans had been ripped off. Good thing I was wearing underwear. And that was my first people are crazy experience. My first huge experience was at Universal Studios. It was a rock star moment for all of us. I mean, the crowds were just packed. They were chanting our names. We were supposed to do 1 show with 1,000 people. But when people started camping out in line at Universal Studios 2 days in advance to get tickets, they figured out they were in trouble. So they moved us to their biggest amphitheater, which I think held 6,000 people. We turned it into 5 shows and still turned away tens of thousands because we couldn't get enough in for other shows. And you guys remember Star Trek, or maybe Star Trek, Star Wars, whenever they go to warp speed and you see the stars that and they flash and turn into those streaks? I remember coming up on stage. I was the last one to be introduced. They had the other 5 come up already, and they called me up, and I mean, people, Jason. I was like, this is really weird. And, but I mean, the hair on the back of my neck was standing up. The adrenaline was just driving through my veins. And they had told me when we rehearsed this, there was going to be pyrotechnics. They were going to light off these huge explosions when I did this backflip off this huge stage. And I came up to the stage, and it was a 20-foot platform, and I stood there. First set of pyrotechnics went off. I turned around, put my back to the crowd, and did this huge backflip off of the top of this platform, and then stuck it and went into a martial arts kata. And it was absolute insanity. I mean, I can't describe what it is to have people like that just screaming your name, and it was wild. So those were a couple of my moments.
Throughout all the people who got to play the Red Ranger throughout the whole series, what's like still being the face of the Red Ranger, like well known throughout all the rest?
You know, there's only one first to anything. Think of Star Trek. Everybody immediately thinks Captain Kirk. You know, there were others that did admirable work, did a great job. In fact, honestly, my favorite was the bald guy. I can't remember his name. Yeah, he was my favorite captain. And like you guys, everybody thinks Power Rangers, and they go back to the original, well, most people go back to the original series. But it's pretty neat to always be considered the first. It's pretty humbling, and I love the adoration that comes from so many of you for that. That's pretty special to me. But I also don't take away from the fact that there were a lot of very talented Red Rangers that came after me, and each of them did their own special thing. And in some ways, their job was harder. I mean, it was my job to help get the show picked up and put on TV. It was their job to keep it going. So I don't know which was harder, but I can tell you that we all put in the hard work, and we all deserve, our own level of respect. So I have nothing but love for all the Reds and Blacks and Blues and all the guys that came after, and the ladies. How many superhero ladies were out there aside from Wonder Woman before the Pink and Yellow Rangers? Not many. Who? Hot girl. Well, there were lots of hot girls out there. Hot girl. I must have missed that one. Okay. All right. Did she wear a lot of clothes? No. How did I miss that one? All right.
And there's also Supergirl and
Next.
So, about you just working with all the other Red Rangers, what was it like doing a Forever Red?
It was really neat. They called me up. I was working for the fire department in the southern D.C., northern Virginia area, and I'd forgotten all about TV. I was going to college, paying my way through college, bartending, and I was working at a fire department, trying to save lives like everybody else, running into burning buildings other people are running out of. Not too bright, but I loved it. And I think it was an email or phone call I got, and they were like, hey, what would you think about coming back to do an episode with all the Red Rangers? I was like, well, what do you mean all the Red Rangers? How many could there be? Like 2, 3? I didn't realize that after we left, Hyman decided he was going to change the cast every season because he didn't want people getting super connected to one group anymore, because that's what happened with our show. And they were like, no, there's been 11, but there's only going to be 10 in this episode. I was like, my jaw hit the floor. And I said, yeah, well, how much time do you need? I mean, I'm a working man now. I can only take so much time off of work to come do this. They said, we need you for 2 days. So I flew out, and I got to meet the other 10. And they sent me the script, and it was really cool. They had me coming in at the last moment. And my line that everybody still gives me, says I love anyway, it was like, you didn't think I was going to let you do this without the original Red Ranger, did you? So, it was really cool. It was a little weird when they were like, hey, man, I grew up watching you. I was like, awkward. I'm not that old, man. But people don't understand how young I was on this show. I was 17. Why they put me in charge is beyond me. But, it's kind of how it went. So it was cool.
So my question is how did you get started in martial arts? And what was the most rewarding, period or moment as a martial artist?
Well, my father has been in martial arts his whole life before me. I got started at the age of 5, and he brought me into the arts. We started with Kenpo, which was his base style. And from there, he was a Marine. We traveled constantly. So I had a choice every 9 months when we moved. It was quit or take what was available at the next base, next area we lived. So I learned really quick. I wasn't a quitter, and I studied whatever was available wherever I went as much as I could. My first martial art outside of my father was judo. And after judo, tangsudo, shinkido, pabangdo, and then I went on and on. I probably had my fingers in 23, 24 different arts today. So there's times where I've kind of laid off for a few years. While I was overseas for the war, we pretty much did combatives. I worked with the soldiers and Marines, and I would take what they knew, and we'd add a few things here and there and do some cool stuff like that. But I think probably one of the most not gratifying, but one of the moments where I knew I still believe in the old martial arts. I believe that lessons like humility are important. That's why I'm not a big MMA fan. Not that these guys aren't martial artists, not that they're not incredible. Some of them are true athletes, some of them are incredibly capable. But I hate the big mouth that is attached to it. That's not how I was trained. That's not what I was brought up and taught was important. If you can have a big mouth and be a fighter, you should be in WWF. If you're going to be a martial artist, I think you ought to have a little discipline and humility. That's the way I believe. It's the way I was trained. So I was taught, you use this to protect your loved ones. And that's what you use it for. Yourself and your loved ones. That's it. And I was 18 years old, and I was dating a very cute little blonde. I took a wrong turn in LA, ended up on a bad part of town. And I went into the store to get directions. It was 7-Eleven. And all of a sudden, the guy at the counter is looking over my shoulder, and his eyes got real big. And I turned around, and a van had pulled in next to my car, and they busted out the window with a tire iron, and they were dragging my girlfriend out through the window. And they were going to drag her into a van. And there was 4 guys. I don't remember getting to the door. I remember going through it. And I remember guys swinging tire irons and chains at me, and I cleaned them up. Hardcore. And in the end, I was white. They were not. So naturally, they tried to sue me because I was white. And thank goodness for the videotapes, because the courts all saw that I was attacked. They came after me, and the fact that they weren't white didn't matter. And needless to say, my girlfriend had deep cuts all the way down to her back, cut through her dress where they drug her through the window. And it was a bad day. But that was the first time I'd had to use it in school when kids jumped me, but that was the first time I'd ever had to use it in a situation where I was truly worried for someone other than myself. So, hope none of you ever have to deal with that, but if you study, hopefully you'll be prepared for the day that you do. Yes?
What do you do nowadays?
Well, I retired from combat medicine and fire medicine. I came home from the war in 2014. And I didn't know much about the convention world. So Walter Jones, who'd been in it for years, was like, hey, you should meet my agent. Come check it out. I said, yeah, that'd be neat. People shooting cameras instead of rifles at me. That's a change I can live with, literally. And so I came back, and I was reintroduced to the love that you guys have for the show. And you guys really are what brought me back into the industry today. So now I start filming The Order in 2 weeks in Los Angeles. I just finished a movie with John Schneider last October that'll be out later this year called Tres Leches. It's a comedy. I play an incredibly stupid cop chasing 3 incredibly stupid teenagers that think they're going to drive to the Philippines for 50 cents a mile from Baton Rouge. Anyway, so it's really funny. And that'll be out later this year. I've got another movie called A Gift of the Heart that I'm putting together. John Schneider will be in that one with me. I'm talking to some other casts. And that's a drama. And we talk about discrimination. We talk about cancer. It's going to hit you in the feel goods. If you have any compassion or soul, that movie's it's gonna put a tear in your eye. It's going to be pretty intense. The book, A Gift of a Heart, is available on Amazon Prime right now, so you can find it there. We hope to start filming, if things go the way I would like, in March. So I'm looking forward to that. I have a huge program that I'm getting ready to announce later this year on autism. We just had someone. Nice to meet you, buddy. I'm glad. We're going to take care of you, too.
Okay, I have autism, and I'm glad to meet you again.
Well, you too, buddy. We just had somebody donate 200 acres to us to build our facility on, and the first facility is going to be based in Columbus, Ohio. And I spent 16 years in emergency services, and there are a lot of people that don't understand, what autism is. They don't understand the difference between autism and Asperger's. They don't understand that there's a spectrum for autism. High functioning, low functioning, and a whole variation in between. And what does that mean? And I still hear people say pretty hateful things because they don't understand what it is they're encountering. So my number one goal is to get information out there on it. Let people understand, because everybody knows somebody, for the most part, that's in the spectrum somewhere. So we're going to put information out. I've been asked to sit on the board for, we have the world's best autism researchers. There's nobody better. And so we're getting ready to put that program together. I'm going to make announcements on it later this year. We'll build a one-of-a-kind facility. We're going to put together technology that is currently available but has never been utilized for people with autism in order to provide them with some of the consistencies that they might need in their day-to-day life. So that's just the beginnings. Just the beginnings. It's going to be a global effect. I also have an animated series that when I get more spare time and another me, I'm going to go ahead and produce and put out there. So I've got several other movies in various stages of production, one called Gideon's Frontier, another one called Survival's End. So I've got a lot of projects. What I need is about 40 employees and the ability to pay 40 employees so that then I can do all this work I need to get done so I can get things produced. I've got some faith-based films that I'm looking to put together. I've got all kinds of stuff. So the list just goes on and on. I'm going to do work with the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. I'm doing work with cancer foundations, lots of stuff like that. So people come to me because I've got 16 years in emergency medicine. I've got 2 degrees in medicine. And I'm not just a guy that works in front of a camera. So I do a lot behind the scenes that I don't really talk about.
Mr. St. John, thank you so much for your time. I think that's bringing our panel to a close.